Hi, and welcome to Robotics and Advanced Rehabilitation Technology, HyperHope. This is a virtual reality, robotic assisted gait training, and early power mobility sessions. We're very happy to be here in a virtual community to join the community forum. Today our presenters, all from North America, two from Canada, and one from the United States, will be presenting a very, hopefully, innovative program for you. Our presenters in order will be Elaine Biddess, who is at Howland Bloorview. She's an OT engineer, and she's going to be discussing a very interesting virtual reality platform that we're trying to negotiate with. Anna McCormick, who is in Ottawa and is the head of the technology section for the Ontario Brain Institute, and then Cole Galloway from the United States. I'm going to be framing the session, and our learning objectives are to describe why technology advancement is important in rehab, describe what technology development is meaningful and impactful in PEDS rehab, give 3 examples of some exciting technology. We know that there's an explosion in technology for rehab, robotics, orthotics, wearable sensors, computer gaming, virtual reality, you name it, we are doing it. And we're going to be only speaking about 3. Technology's vision has always been to create opportunities, and there are stages of adaptation to technology. I would say that probably everyone in our group is going to be very early adopters to innovative. I'm more of the early adopter, and the others will be innovators. It takes a while for things to catch on, and you know, there's a adoption life cycle that we hope to accelerate by providing forums to parents and communities like yourselves. In rehabilitation, I think of the strategies that we have are substitution, compensation, and neural recovery. People spend a lot of time on talking about neural recovery and compensation, but substitution technology for us have really opened up worlds for people, and we've seen that, and everyone appreciates that. Why now technology? Costs are coming down. There's many solutions that can be found based without technologies. There's smart devices, robotic games. It's becoming increasingly cost effective, and technology literacy is gained through learning and tinkering, and that's available for all. Each speaker will be giving their presentation in about 10-minute blocks with pros and cons of their technology. I'm going to ask you to consider 7 main points when it comes to technology. One is, does the technology enhance care and outcomes, or does it distract from the issues of disability? Are there ways that technology may have a negative impact on the family, child, or the healthcare system, or essentially unintended consequences? What's the quality of the evidence and the proof of the concept? And does the evidence need to be superior or just usual to the usual treatment? And does technology have a lasting effect over the ICF model, International Classification of Function? And does technology solve a real world problem? Is it acceptable in terms of the durability, reliability, and usability? And is it affordable and marketable? We want to have a recipe for successful innovation. We have creative problem solvers, creative integrators, determined users, and this will hopefully be our success for innovation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Elaine so that she can introduce us to a very unique system that is being developed for virtual gaming. So thank you, and Elaine, I'm going to stop my sharing.
Great. I will now share my screen. Thank you so much, Deb, for the introduction. And I'm really excited to be here today with you to tell you a little bit about BoodleBlast, our virtual reality gaming platform. So just before we get started, I want to disclose that we are working on creating a small startup company to try to commercialize BoodleBlast and get it out there to people. So I want everyone to be aware of that. So first of all, many years ago, when movement tracking video games came onto the market, people started to ask the question, families, clinicians, and children, can therapy video games really engage and motivate children to perform therapeutic movements, or are they really chocolate-covered broccoli? Now, my personal opinion is that they are actually chocolate-covered broccoli, but there's no reason why they can't be the best darn chocolate-covered broccoli out there. So there's a few things that make therapeutic video games very different from entertainment video games. So in the design of an entertainment video game, game developers make the controls that you have to use to play the game as easy as possible to learn and to do as possible, because the fun of the video game is not in the controller, it's in the gameplay, the narrative, the rewards that you get when you're playing the game. And this is the exact opposite to what we need to do for therapy video games, which is to where we can't make the movements needed to control the game easy. They have to be challenging. They have to be focused on the movements that are relevant to children's therapies. So that being said, we set off, and knowing this is the world that we live in, we started off to try to design the best video games that we could for therapeutic purposes. And to do this, we involved and talked at length and play tested with children with disabilities, their families, knowing that kids play partners are often typically developing brothers and sisters and friends. And we also worked with a interdisciplinary team of game developers, therapists, clinicians, engineers, user experience specialists, composers, you name it, we worked with them. So in thinking about optimizing engagement in therapy games, we look to the psychological theories, and one of them in particular, self-determination theory, which posits that people do things to experience personal control and choices, feelings of mastery, as well as connections with others. And so we went about to design a video game that could offer all three of these motivational components. I'll play a short video now, which will show the system, or give you an introduction to the system. Let me just see how I start this video.
Introducing Boodleblast, a movement tracking video game that makes therapy exercises fun. In Boodleblast, your body is the controller. A camera is used to track movements in real time. Boodleblast has 13 mini-games to engage players in high-intensity therapy practice, in clinic and at home. Each mini-game targets specific body movements and motor skills. In some games, players use real-world objects, like building blocks, to practice fine motor skills. Boodleblast can be customized to each player's abilities and therapy goals. Boodleblast can be played individually or with a friend.
And so we really tried to take a family-centered approach to the design of both the technology as well as how we're researching it in implementation, in interventions. And so one of the key features is this idea that you can personalize your practice goal. So we know that not all families have 20 minutes a day, every day, to sort of play a therapy game. For some families, being able to practice 20 minutes 3 times a week would be a benefit. So this allows the game to provide rewards that are both short, mid, and long term that reward achievement of these personalized goals. And these are woven into sort of an engaging narrative that, engages kids over a long period of time. So in terms of where we are now, I'm going to just briefly discuss are three areas, sort of the research, the continued technology development, as well as our efforts towards commercialization. And more so, I've realized how linked these three aspects are when you're trying to innovate new technologies. So in terms of research, Boodle Glass has been used in clinics at Hull and Bloorview since October of 2017 with kids of multiple diagnoses and conditions, including cerebral palsy, spinal cord injuries, as well as acquired brain injuries. We recently completed a home pilot with 5 kids with cerebral palsy in Toronto. And the objective of this pilot was really to look at whether the system worked well, whether it was acceptable to families, whether kids would use it over an extended period of time, and some limited efficacy. In the beginning of next year, we'll be starting a study down in Costa Rica, and this is being led by one of my graduate students, Daniela Chanviquez. And we're looking at whether Boodle Glass is feasible in a rural setting, where families have very little access to therapy services. And again, this is a feasibility study, and it will involve 15 children with hemiplegic cerebral palsy. Another study that will be starting next year is really looking at real-world implementation. So when you test a technology within sort of a well-monitored clinical trial, it may be very different than families trying to set it up and use it independently, more independently at home. So we want to see how easy the system is to sort of set up and navigate, whether families perceive it to be impactful for their child's goals. And for this study, we'll be involving 60 children with diverse neuromotor conditions across Canada and the US. And lastly, we're conducting a pilot randomized control trial. This will look at the feasibility of conducting a full-scale randomized control trial, as well as a need for monitoring therapists to facilitate the Boodle Glass intervention. So in terms of a few results from our pilot study, we had 5 children involved in the study with their demographics listed here. 4 were boys and 1 was a girl with a range of abilities, largely hemiplegic cerebral palsy, but our 5th participant was had quadriplegia. Our 5th participant had the COVID special in terms of the intervention, in that we were unable to conduct the post-intervention assessments, but he did have the system in his house for 26 weeks as opposed to 12 weeks when we were able to pick it up. 4 of the children completed the 12-week study. 1 child did not, and I think it was the girl. She wasn't actually very interested in video games, and the intervention clearly was not the right fit for her. In terms of playtime, almost all of the children reached their playtime goal that they set personalized with their families. On average, it was about 1 hour per week over the 12 weeks, and this is active therapy movement that was achieved. In terms of technical barriers, there were limited, just 2 reported, and they were addressed either by phone or in one case by home visit within 1 week. Looking at clinical outcomes, which are available for 3 of the participants, all 3 saw improvements in the box and blocks, as well as a measure of sort of perceived performance and satisfaction on a family-directed goal, the Canadian Occupational Performance Measure. And we also saw individual improvements in terms of grip strength, range of motion, and as well as in perceived use of the hemiplegic hand in everyday life for 2 of the participants, and in terms of quality of upper limb movement, also for 2 of the participants. So in terms of some of the qualitative data, we found that the kids really enjoyed leveling up, and the rewards that were associated with the game. The modality of therapy was very convenient for families, and they liked the family-centered approach. In terms of technology development, we're moving to a lower cost hardware platform that will be easier for families to set up within the home. We're looking at remote data collection options and more advanced progress tracking using the joint and skeletal data that we collect, as well as expanding the therapeutic goals for the system. And lastly, as I mentioned, we are trying to create a small startup, Pearl Interactives. We're in the process of identifying advisors, board members, and partners to work with us on this journey. We're in an accelerator program at the University of Toronto. We're doing market surveys to try to best understand how we can provide Boodle Blast in a way that's convenient and affordable for families. And we're doing fundraising to try to set up the company. And if you'd like to stay abreast of these activities, the website for the company is pearlinteractives.com. So lastly, I'd like to acknowledge some of our funders who've supported us throughout the 7 years of development that's taken to create Boodle Blast. And at this point, I'll pass it on to our next presenter, Cole, I believe. And I'm happy to answer questions following the presentations.
Elaine, this is Debbie. I would think we were going to have Anna, if that's okay.
Oh, Anna, sorry.
Yeah. We're going to have
my mistake.
If unless. Oh, okay. So I'm going to ask Anna McCormick then to provide us some insight into her technology of a robotic gait trainer. This is something that is very much of interest because of the exoskeleton and robotic design. And while Anna's starting to share her screen, Anna is in Ottawa. She's the head of the technology section for the Ontario Brain Institute. She's a pediatric rehabilitation physician, and she is the head of this program. So please join us, Anna.
So thank you. First of all, are my slides projecting appropriately?
I don't see them yet.
Okay, well, I put share screen. So let me go back and see what I did wrong. There and there. Share screen. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. There's a lot of clicking. Okay, so thank you, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. And I'm going to present on robotic walkers. And we've had the pleasure of testing 2 walkers that I'm going to highlight today. To start with, I don't have anything particular to disclose. I will disclose that this certainly is teamwork, and I have a small but keen team, including Hannah Elazem, who is a pediatric rehabilitation specialist, and Sarah Zadie, who's my research coordinator. We have research support through the Ontario Brain Institute and the Cerebral Palsy Integrated Neuroscience Network, as well as our hospital, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario in Ottawa, Canada. The first walker I want to tell you about today is called the SoloWalk, and it was designed and developed at our local university, Carleton University, with some adult rehabilitation specialists. It's for larger youth, and some key features include omnidirectional wheels, so it can move in multiple directions and turn. It has a lift built into the device, again, very helpful when a child is larger. It has a body weight harness, a remote control so that the therapist or the person walking with the person can control speed and direction, or the person themselves can control their speed or direction. When we were approached to look at this walker, it hadn't been tested in cerebral palsy. We decided to look at, to start with a case study and a young man who was 17 years of age who had spastic quadriplegia GMFCS4. This young boy had used a walker when he was young for exercise, but had not used it in the last 2 years because it was harder to put him in it. He had grown larger, his crouch had worsened, and really by the time everyone got him in his walker, he and they were exhausted. So to our surprise, when we tried the device, and this is the picture of the first generation 1 walker, he could walk about 40 meters in our 1-hour session. Feedback from the family was positive about safety, comfort, and device responsiveness. And this video, which is a little bit old now, brought great excitement to our group. Near the end of the video, you will see Mom giving an upright hug, which is the first upright hug she'd had in years. So she was very excited and there were tears all around. And you can see the lift of the device being a fairly smooth up and down. So onward from that single case study, we moved to looking at more individuals with similar description of its cerebral palsy. So we looked at 4, and we did semi-structured interviews. So we really asked open-ended questions to the therapists, the families, the engineers, everyone involved of what they thought of the device. And then we audio taped the interviews and verbatim recorded what people had said. And then we looked at what some of the themes were in what they were telling us. And really, there were physical advantages and social advantages, physical disadvantages and social disadvantages. What they really liked was the ability to walk hands-free, which really gave a more versatile use. Physically, they noticed opportunities for improvement of physical fitness. Socially, the young people really wondered if they could potentially use it in the classroom and even go to the washroom independently. And you can imagine at this age that would present something very important to them. They also wondered of different opportunities to engage with their peers in different ways, such as sports and gym. The physical disadvantages, they weren't thrilled with some of the harness design and wanted different design options. The device was large and clunky. And then socially, they really wanted to do things like go and play on a ball field and different terrains, and really that wasn't possible with that device. We did get feedback from the first device to the second, so we have a generation 2 device, and then we took it into the community. We brought it to the Whitby Ability Center, which is a large gym, which is shown here, and we brought it to a adolescent camp, and this young man, one of our volunteers for this study shows how it was utilized here. We had 5 participants, and this is a busy slide, but essentially they told us it was fairly easy to transfer into, it was comfortable, it's easy to walk, and they enjoyed it. They were able to pass things, throw things, and kick things in it. And during their activities, we noticed that the heart rate could move into moderate to intense exercise levels. And they really didn't have a lot of things they would change on the device. So that was Walker 1. After that, we were approached by another creator, again, a Canadian group from Toronto, to look at the Trexo robotic gait trainer. This was a little different in that it was for smaller children from about 6 to 12. It had different sizes, small, medium, and large, and has a wearable, it's a wearable robotic device, almost like an exoskeleton with a wrist and walker. It's controlled by a tablet. And here you can see some of the pages of the tablet. It has power at the hip and the knee, and it controls the movements. It has adjustable support, and you can push off to some degree. And children liked in investigating their environment. We initially had an individual come in and train us on the device, and we looked at children from 2 to 6. And a number of children really enjoyed the device and found it comfortable and were able to utilize it fairly well. So we moved on to look at it more rigorously, and we started with a case study, which we are continuing to look at. A young boy with a GMFCS4 cerebral palsy, a 5-year-old, was our first candidate. And we looked at it in a school setting and in a home environment. He's now a home user of the device and rents the device. I think it's interesting to listen to what his dad has to say.
Technology allows us to develop kids. It can be very precise, and you can really kind of tweak it and get that repetitiveness in that can really tap into the concept of neuroplasticity, which we know is real, and it can really help obtain that or maximize that potential in the kids. Specifically, it's allowing us to have him walk into school these days, whereas previously for appointments, whatever, we would need to bring him in a wagon or a chair. Now we can put him in the Trexo.
So is that going to work as long as I don't have my earbuds in?
That worked great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we continue to monitor him as he goes through his journey and testing this. He's done a total of 17 device training sessions, taken about 904 steps for each 30-minute session. And the average heart rate during the session is within average exercise range. And we are seeing some small increases in the 2-minute walk test. Please note that that is in the device. The parents are telling us that basically it's comfortable during walking and to get him in and out of the device. They did notice some difficulties with adductor tone and that the saddle was too wide, so some changes were made there, and uneven surfaces continue to be a problem. They would also like to see some movement at the ankle. So we are now poised with some funding from the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario and an innovation grant to do a study with a number of individuals who are going to use our robotic gait trainers with a number of objective outcomes. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you, Anna. Last but not least, Cole, if you don't mind taking it away. We've got a sort of a grassroots approach to technology coming up, and we look forward to your presentation.
Well, hi, everybody. Hi to families and caregivers. I'm Cole Galloway. I spend most of my time at the University of Delaware. Actually, I spend most of my time in living rooms and school systems and places in the community. And the technology I'm going to talk to you about today was demanded by families. It's been shaped by families, and I'm really proud of us continuing that cycle back around to families. So when I was asked to do a family forum, I was all in. Many people contributed to this technology. Go Baby Go is a 150 chapter, 1,000 volunteers doing a little bit for kids and adults with mobility. This particular presentation is taken from something we just presented to Toyota, and Andrina Sabet, who's a Go Baby Go senior member and pediatric therapist at Cleveland Clinic, contributed highly. All the videos and things you're going to see here are with permission of families. So let's get going. So right away, just to give you a little bit of background on the types of things you're about to see, we're going to see ride-on cars, and we're also going to see portable harnesses. And those two technologies came out of principles. And our basic principles for Go Baby Go as a worldwide movement is the technology has to be social, which means stigma has to be low. We deal oftentimes with babies 6 months to 3, 4, 5-year-old kids. And that's what we'll be talking about today. And self-initiation is really important. Of course, mobility is really important. Self-discovery, when we do studies sponsored by National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, we're always measuring many different things. One of the key things is the cognition, language, socialization, and movement that's learned in our technology. Co-creation is a developmental psychology term that we focus on, which is not only an independent person that we're trying to help a baby become, but a co-creator, a person that attacks the world with an exploratory drive and sort of takes the physical, meaning objects, and the social, meaning people, the physical and social world in their hands and manipulates, creates their own world. And of course, we're going to do all this technology development in the real world. We're never going to leave the real world. Our meetings for design meetings are going to be in the real world. So the two things we'll talk about today are modified cars and bodyweight support systems. And I don't have a lot of time, as the other presenters didn't have much time. And I'm going to err on the side of giving you videos that show the technology in action. I want to say here a thank you to NIH and NSF, Robert Wood Johnson, Toyota, Fisher-Price, and Mattel, and other corporations that have helped make all this stuff possible. At the end, I'll give you my contact information. I can send you a bibliography of the case reports and group studies that we've done, and anything else that you'd like. And hopefully you'll contact me about getting involved with Go Baby Go. So here's where we build the technology in workshops. And I'm not hearing the volume on my machine. If you're not hearing it, it's okay. The visual should take you through the build process. So I'm going to stop this right here and just sort of catch you up with what you're seeing. This is a build in a community where corporations, local businesses donate the ride-on cars. So these are off-the-shelf ride-on cars. Yep, this is what you would order from Amazon. And then we can use relatively low-tech materials if needed, such as that central big red switch. And are those PVC pipes? Sure they are. Is that a pool noodle? Yes, it is. Everything with ride-on cars, for the most part, is a lower tech. And that's specifically so that we can ramp toward 300,000 cars, which are our estimates of what adaptive play needs of kids birth to 4 and 5 are. Underneath this car could be a tracker that tracks where the car is going and how much it's being used, if we wanted to do research on that. That's been published. If it's a STEM class that's building, they may want to go a little bit above that and put a remote control. They want to maybe put a speed dial on there. So our builders are equally important as our riders. The diagnoses that kids have used ride-on cars are across the spectrum. from babies with general developmental delay through Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and just high-risk preterm babies. So we tend not to cater the Go Baby Go Ride on Car program to any one diagnosis. And again, we're customizing these cards to fit the ability of the child. So let me talk to you about one really cool car that we've been studying in the lab and that we've been getting out as far as hardware list and build videos. And I get asked a lot, hey, but for that car, can my kid in STEM class build that car? Sure they can. Can we build that at home? Yes, you can. Can we try to get a clinician to help us and an engineer at a local community college or university to help us do that? Yes, they're doing that right now. So contacting me will allow you to start that process. So a 3-in-1 is a modified ride-on car. This one is a little all-terrain vehicle by Fisher-Price, but it doesn't have to be that. That has 3 functions in one vehicle. And here you see a sweetie driving the typical seated way, has a central connection activated button to activate the car. Standing, and we have Declan show you what standing does. Now, when the child stands, that's how it activates the car. And here's where therapists and researchers and families go, wait. I understand sitting and driving as a participation and play. But when Declan stands up, are you sort of breaking the rules? Is it now kind of a balance, strengthener, coordinated participation? What is this? So people kind of go like, wait, what is this? And that's what's so sweet about a ride-on car that you can make with low tech in general, is that you can make it adaptive. And as kids are starting to work on standing, you can have standing. Have we done a harness that goes onto the PVC, so a child that's working on standing but can't maintain standing could do this? Yeah. So let's see Declan do his thing out in the community.
Do it again. So big. So big. So big, Griffin. You're so big. Yay!
So from a research perspective, clinical perspective, a family perspective, when you stop Declan and go, well, what is he working on? The speech language pathologist says, that must be a language device. And occupational therapist says, oh, that's participation and cognition. Physical therapists like myself are like, wait a minute, that's a mobile gym. And that's where you get that. Like, what the heck are you trying to prove? Well, Andrina then took this sit-stand car and made it 3. Now let's take a look at one of our little research subjects doing her thing. She's graduated from sitting driving to sit-stand driving. And now she spends most of her time standing driving and behind her power push toy.
Go, Ella, go!
And so Ella's off to the races. And Ella was part of, and Declan were part of a research study that we're submitting right now, which we looked at kids with Down syndrome from about 7 months old to about 24 months old. We followed them for 7 or 8 months of treatment. And probably the best thing that I got out of that was families telling us that they could average 30 to 45 minutes per day, 5 times a week. With that kind of dosage in the social world, having fun, there's a lot of good things that are going to happen, whether you look at the literature, whether you ask families or clinicians. All right, now let's take a quick, for the last couple of minutes, and look at something slightly different. This is a bodyweight support apparatus. Now, many people have seen bodyweight support over a treadmill, maybe over ground. This is putting bodyweight support for young kids under 50 pounds within a beach canopy or an enriched farmer's market tin. So if you've seen the tins at farmers markets or at the beaches, the tins, that's what we've done, is taking the basics of a bodyweight support system and made it such that a child can explore the 10 by 10 foot area here. So let's take a look at what you do. I want to give you a video of not just an individual child performing in and having fun, but really, like I said, for Go Baby Go, everything needs to be social, it needs to be co-creative, AKA a social, crazy, chaotic childhood. So let's look at what happens when you put 2 or 3s together and involve multiple kids. This is a harness thing.
Behind you. Oh, good job.
Beauty.
They're talking cups right now. Cup language.
Uh-oh, dance.
So each of these kids, multiple different types of diagnoses, are all working on their sit-stand abilities, they're working on communication abilities, they're starting to learn the first cognitive social rules. The family is also learning how to accommodate a child that has reduced mobility, but also what to do when you've unleashed a kid that's typically immobile onto a mobile. And I can tell you, as a researcher who sort of counts the movements, counts the cognitive events, it's overwhelming to see a child with very little movement, both looking at the caregiver and the child, and then unleash something like this. It's hard to go back. Let's just finish this out before we end. And I have to tell you, were there crying? Yes. Was there some biting? Sure. Was there some poking? Yes. Some wrestling? Yes. And of course, families all understand that's something that they want for their kids. It's really hard to do if you can't be mobile. I love it.
What, you want to shoot? Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. Oh, Henry. Yeah, I'm like, no. Watch me.
I am roaring, hear me roar.
Push it. Go. Go. I like those wind in her hair.
You got it.
Go, James, go. Go, James, go. Oh, good girl.
People always ask us, how do you track all this? There's so much going on. How do you track all this? That's okay. That's a great problem for researchers. How do I track all the activity, cognitive, language, and social events?
Behind you.
So I'll end there. Please contact me if you're interested in Go Baby Go technologies, some of which you can build, like the ride-on cars. Others you can buy, like the portable harness systems. One plug for how we're going to reach that 300,000 car goal is we have a K through 12 STEM curriculum. So if you have a builder in your family, you have a builder in your neighborhood that you think would enjoy doing, building a car as part of classroom activities or a club, that's what we do. Thanks to Robert Wood Johnson for giving us the resources to build a big girl curriculum. So thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
Perfect, Cole. For the families, I think they really got a nice sense of the spectrum of technology development and the needs. Oops, let's see if I can get my last slide. And we're going to then have the opportunity to have questions from the audience. Are going to be moderated by Jen. So why don't we start the questions?
Hey, why don't, if we can have all the presenters turn on their videos that everybody can see you guys. We have one question. I only got one in the chat box, so hopefully some of our other guests are gonna pipe in. But the first question is for Elaine. And it's coming from Miriam Maxwell. She would like to know, were the subject children able to complete the game independently or perhaps after an initial setup and training?
So in this pilot study, they were given an initial sort of training session. And we had a researcher who went to the house and set it up for the kids and the families. So in some follow-up studies that we're doing, we're going to be looking at whether families can set up the system themselves. We believe that they will be able to set it up themselves. It's not any more complicated than setting up sort of a Connect console or one of the sort of mainstream sort of consoles. So we've designed it with that level of technical sort of expertise required. So kids were very independent for the most part in navigating and playing the game on a daily basis. They played quite a bit with family members when they were available, because it's just more fun to play together. And we found we had one family who had very little experience with video games. They had no experience with video games, actually. The father going into the study was actually quite concerned that they wouldn't be able to navigate the technology. And one of the things that he noted at the end of the study was that he was very surprised and pleased at how easy it was to navigate the technology, and how video gaming, therapeutic video gaming, became a enjoyable pastime for his family, both his children as well as his wife and himself. So.
Awesome. I have another question. This was from myself. When you were developing the video games, how do you accommodate for children with cortical visual impairment and other visual impairments that we see in cerebral palsy?
Yes. So that is one, we try to use high contrast wherever we could, but certainly it is a limitation of the system that if you have visual limitations, it would likely not be the right fit for the child, unfortunately.
And one of the things I want to add for the audience is that when you're developing games for the home, or even with Cole, there's different sets of approval that you need to seek, so that devices such as the walkers will have to have FDA approval versus gaming. So it's much easier to get a game into the home quickly versus a medical device such as a walker, or even at that point a wheelchair. So it's sort of obviating, sort of going around the back door to get the treatment that the kids need by calling it a game. Or even, Cole, I'm interested in how you've been able to sort of escape notice so far with sort of the legal issues.
Well, FDA goes off of intent, and FDA goes off of commercialization, and we don't commercialize, and our intent is actually universal design. So probably one of the best things that's starting right now, and we've tried to do this, and are really we're super geeked about being able to do this, is universal design, where Mattel and Fisher-Price being interested in our designs that have widened the ability of kids to use their products. They don't want to make a high stigma, high cost, low unit car, and no family wants to have a stigmatized, why have a race car that we then put all this stuff on top of it that chases kids away, whereas a race car, chicks dig race cars, everybody knows that, guys dig race cars. So it really isn't the design. The aesthetic and social and co-creative is really there, and stumbling on. And again, I've told this over and over, this was not my idea. This was families looking at our high-end, go-nowhere robotic joystick-driven stuff and going, yeah, but what about now? And I was like, well, it took 6 months to a year of their constant chatter. They're the mom bloggers alone, right? And finally I went, oh, you know what we should do? We should probably just do a car. And the world went, well, shit, yeah, we should. And the next thing you know, it's like, so this was not, and I know the other, maybe they want to speak to this, the other inventor scientists, it's hard to leave the lab, and maybe the other people want to comment on, but families can do that. So my strong suggestion is to track down these other two very qualified, very passionate people and demand they do better, faster, and more. And then I would say to families, they won't be able to do that unless you drag them screaming and kicking like I was out of the lab, out of the clinic, but also you have to participate. You have to flag wave, and because both Elaine and Anna will have to fight hard to leave the clinic and the lab, even though they want to. So I can't underscore enough that families have a lot of power, and you need to be banging the gong for this technology. That's the only way it's going to come to you. Otherwise, we're just going to shrink in pink adult rehab technologies, and you're not going to get what your kid needs, and you don't have it now. So don't let these other two folks or myself get away without you calling them and demanding. And it'll take that, because there's a lot of pressures to stay clinical, stay laboratory based at funding. So if you like this technology, fund it. They'll take American or Canadian, whichever. Right.
And I will agree with Cole. This is the time. COVID is an opportunity in some respects because a lot of families don't want to go into a hospital-based setting. They want things within their home, and many families are being told to stay home and to stay within your bubble. And what a great opportunity to develop home-based devices.
And I hear clinicians that I have in Go Baby Go going, I've got my car, and I sent them a harness, and I got the harness funded by the local, this, that, and the other. What I really need is some other activities. And I'll be able to turn to them and go, well, track down Elaine and demand that she make something super fun, and and make sure Anna can continue to reduce the giant refrigerator chasing the kid on where they can play ball, right? They're telling you, I want to play ball. Chicks dig it when I play ball. And so that I can run away from the home. And so I can, I can go to college, and I can ditch these parents, and I can start to be independent. But I can't underscore enough, families demanding, that's a big deal. And like Anna said, clinicians, at least in the States, are going, I love this kind of telehealth, but I have nothing there. I wish I had a blank. And for commercialization, everybody should be seeing that as, here we go. Here's the white space you move into. Yeah.
Cool. I couldn't agree more. For the first couple of years of my career, I kept trying to come up with great ideas. And then I realized that all I had to do was listen to the families and listen to what they wanted, sort of thing. And if I just responded to that, that ended up being a solution that was a solution to the real problem, as opposed to a problem I had generated in my head that generated interesting research papers and got grants, sort of thing.
Who will let us design technology? We're temporarily able-bodied adult non-caregivers.
Exactly.
Stop.
Stop. You don't want my ideas.
Look me in the eye, families. Look me in the eyes, moms, dads, aunts, uncles. You will have to wrestle this, because the forces are keeping Elaine and Anna squarely in the building, and you will have to drag them out. And when you drag them out, they'll be nervous, and you just tell them what you need, and Anna will have it. So I'll do this.
Just for the record, we did take our device into the Ability Center and to a community-based young person's program. So we have actually been outside of the hospital, and our smaller device is now a home user, and we're migrating to a home user study. So we're getting there, but the power of the family and to help us driving that forward can't be underestimated.
That was actually a question that we had, was when you are designing these robotic gait trainers, Why aren't y'all designing it for community use right out the gate? That the original version of yours looked like it was more for the clinic use, and then the second one you were able to take it out. So the question actually came in while you were giving that presentation. You know, now is that where you're going with this? Are they all going to be focused on trying to get the robotic walkers in the community?
So the initial device was designed for adults, is number one, and more in a hospital setting to get people mobilized quickly in a post-operative setting. That being said, we took our opportunity when it was presented to us to look at how it could help the people we try to serve and assist. So we really did try to look at it from that perspective. I'm older, so I can tell you the initial computer being the Commodore 64 and the present computer being a watch. We do have our eyes on the prize of having it smaller and potentially even as a wearable. So that, and Cole will be happy to hear that. I think, you know, we really do want a device that's going to be very user-friendly, very sleek, very socially acceptable. And we want to keep children, youth, and families at the center of development, surrounded by these very organized teams with slick processes, so we can speed up the time from concept to development. So it's not a lifetime of a child, which it feels like. That feels like there's so many lumps and bumps along the way in this development that we need people to come behind us so we can take some of these roadblocks away and really get the right device to the right person at the right time. And that's super powerful.
I can speak to the Trexo too. The person who devised it, it was for a family member who had a child, and the Trexo was specifically designed for children and in the home and in the setting. So that was sort of from the gate. It was meant to be an outside device, not something in the clinic like we usually do. But there is that two-edged sword, because I think walkers are DME, and DME is subject to reimbursement unless you have a whole chunk of change, because the Trexo isn't inexpensive. So then you only have it, it's not an equitable distribution unless you can get it funded in some capacity. So I think it's a struggle. It's a big struggle. I know that there had been some talk that maybe engineering and technology innovation shouldn't happen in a university, but totally outside, and not have the checks and balances that we have, Elaine and Anna, for our departments. Let's say, for me, the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab now used to be RIC, that it should just happen in design spaces like you say, Cole. So I think that's the push me, pull me. You know, as clinicians, we need to see the science, I still believe, even though, you know, it's very apparent when you look at a video how impressive that is. You still need to have that, I think, the conceptual, theoretical, and intellectual backing.
So we have a couple questions from Alexis. Alexis, if you'd like to unmute yourself, go for it. And then we'll have to probably round it out. We've kind of hit our timeline, but I would love to hear from you.
Awesome, thank you. It's easier to talk over audio than type. So I have two questions, one for the first presenter and then another one for the end presenter. I apologize that I'm not saying your names. I'm terrible with names. And just to give you guys some context, I'm 23, I have CP and a GMFCS level 3. So for the video gaming question, as you mentioned in your presentation, you said that for a regular video game, the object is to have an easy control because the enjoyment comes out of playing the video game. So in designing a controller that's a little bit tougher to use to incorporate the therapy goals, how do you keep the children or adults or teenagers, whoever chooses to use it, engaged in the process and not so frustrated that they realize that they can't use the video game as well?
That's a very good, very, very good question. So first of all, we calibrate it to the individual's abilities. So so in terms of the movements that they have to do, if this is the extent of my range of movement, this is what I have to do in the video game to play. If I can do this, then that's what I have to do in the video game to play. And so we calibrate it to each child. This also helps us sort of balance the playing field when kids are playing against, say, typically developing brothers and sisters and things like that. Another thing that I should mention is that while the game is intended for sort of therapy purposes and to say practice movement of an affected limb, say in hemiplegic cerebral palsy, it can be set up to play with the dominant hand as well. So if a child has wants to use it more just as a leisure activity or a fun way of engaging, and have an easier time of controlling the characters, then if they have they can also it can also be set up with the non-dominant hand sort of thing, and that's sort of behind a parent gate, but easily accessible from the settings.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. And I will say, hearing all three of these presentations, I would want to use all three products or all the products that y'all have talked about. So it's awesome to hear. And my second question for the last presenter, when it comes to the cars, I noticed a little girl walking, and I was thinking back to my childhood. How do you get the device to stop if she were to get tired or trip? I know for me, I would start out doing something really well, and maybe I could only take 5 steps or 6 steps, and then I'd fall. So how do you get the device to stop if she were to get tired?
Good question. Not the question I thought you were. I thought you were going to be like, hey, what about harnesses for big people? But
you know, that was a thought, but you know, we'll get to it at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah. 2 ways. One, she has a little switch on there. So if she lets go or doesn't provide enough pressure, sort of pushing it, it turns off. And then with many of the cars, mom or dad, whoever's loving her right at that point, will have a remote control. Also, a speed control that goes so ridiculously slow that even kids just barely working on walking are like, would you please? Like, this is insulting. So, I mean, it goes so very slow, but I think she fell 1 time or 2 times and skinned her knees, and mom gave us a picture and was all teary.
Yeah.
So we didn't count that, I'm being recorded, but we didn't count that as an incident back for IRB, because again, for research, all these things are, for me, like the other 2 presenters, are research focused. So our bar, forget FDA, we've got internal review boards, and internal review boards in babies, they see me coming and they're like, oh, baby, what are you doing now? But we allow, you know, these are cars that went home, and so bumps and bruises, and I think a dog peed on one of the cars, and it was great. And that's, we knew it was going to happen. We designed it steady state. So we were like, yes, finally a pet came through. So it's out there. And what we found, and maybe the other 2 presenters find it too, is that families support real world stuff. They can tell when a technology is going to not just help an impairment, but it's going to sort of has a chance for their child to express themselves. And that's, you know, so when you see that walker, it's not really about the walker, right? It's about the expression. And that's what drives the developers and researchers is getting to know the child, getting to know the adult through movement.
Yeah. Thank you for the answers to that. And you'll tell you, scraped knees, not a lot of people would count that as a blessing, but I would, and I know multiple people who would, just to be able to experience that.
And then Anna's got to get us a walker that, you know, guys and gals can go on dates with. I mean, there's a lot of space there in community. And I'm just, you can tell I'm lightly pushing them because they're such big brains, and we need big brains in the community doing devices that measure what's going on in the community and generating that science.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm mute. I had one final question. This one is back to Elaine. Have y'all considered partnering with Nintendo or Wii or?
So that was where we began this journey. So speaking about things that, as a researcher, I never envisioned doing, and that was designing a whole video game to the extent that we did. So we did initially start off trying to partner with some of the big companies. It's not as, we thought it would be a simple sort of thing as being able to sort of specify which hand is being used in a video game or something like that.
I'm going to.
It's not simple to work the line of these video games. So while I had a lot of support from video gaming companies, we've had Ubisoft and one of the largest video game companies review our design and give us feedback with respect to the user engagement and things like that. It hasn't really worked out in terms of partnering with sort of a company. Before we decided to do a startup, we did look into licensing and explored various opportunities there. Again, you know, it's kind of finding the right fit, somebody who's going to promote the product the way that you want it promoted, which is for us positive impact, not positive profits and things like that. So so that's how we sort of winded up on the path that we're at, sort of thing. But along the way, it became really clear to us, thinking about universal design, that if you design for kids with disabilities and consider them in the design early on, you can create an amazing product that typically developing kids love too, right? Doesn't always work the other way around. I mean, Cole, you've done amazing work in terms of flipping that around and making sure, but sometimes it's difficult to take a mainstream product and sort of, you know, make it work for kids with different abilities. And but doing it the other way around is very, very possible. So in the future, we hope that we can work more with mainstream developers to show them what needs to be done to make their products more universally appealing. And we do work with colleges, trying to work with sort of emerging game developers so that they become more aware of the needs of people of all abilities, so that everyone can play together.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Deb, do you want to close out the, I'll just say, we deeply appreciate you guys joining us for the community forum this year. And I'm so excited to be able to share this with the families around the country, and it's free and easy. So thank you guys so much.
You bet. We hope to see you next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you to all the presenters.
Thank you, Deb.